The recruiting prowess continues in 2020 under James Franklin at Penn State. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, breaking down the game we love each and every day with the best bloggers, broadcasters, and writers in the nation. And of course, it's National Signing Day. Little drama at Penn State. They bring in another class near the top 10 in the country. Got Tim Aiden on the line for Black Shoe Diaries. So we encourage you to hop on over there to check out their work on Penn State athletics. Tim, how you doing tonight?
Doing good. Another signing class in the books. It may not have the flash or in terms of blue chip ratio like the 2019 and 2018 classes did, but this is the largest class James Franklin has ever signed at Penn State. 27 new commitments, and say newly signed commitments, and it's official now. And so, it depending on if the next class turns out to be more like the 18 and 19 classes, then this 2020 class could actually be a very nice complement. I mean, it's still like, as of right now, the number 13 class in the 24/7 composite rankings, and just looking at the teams that are below them, it seems like they should stay in the top 15 when it's all said and done, even after the second signing period in February. So, overall, a successful class, and there's that we'll get into it, but there's definitely several kids that any Penn State fan should be excited about going forward.
As you mentioned, that's a big class at 27, number 12 in the nation last year, number 13 right now currently. That, as you mentioned, regardless of what happens elsewhere, we've got 80 to 90%. I don't know what the figures are going to be this year, but they were rather high in that first national signing early period of December, and it seems as though it's just going to go up and up and up in regards to the top level players, mostly signing during December. And so there's going to be a little change between now and when the final results come out, that first Wednesday of February, what used to be that target date for all of us. So as you run down this class, who stands out? Who is causing a buzz?
I think first and foremost, you got to talk about Curtis Jacobs, linebacker out of Owings Mills, Maryland, McDonough High School, which same high school as PJ Mustafer. So Franklin's hoping to build a pipeline with that's program there at McDonough. But he's the highest rated kid in the class. He's a borderline 5-star according to 24/7 rank composite rankings. I mean, frankly, I think he should have gotten a 5th star, but just my opinion. But he's a very athletic, hard hitter. He actually doubled up as a receiver for his high school, so he can come in and do it all, be ready to play on day one. And the nice thing is Penn State's got enough depth at linebacker; they don't have to force him into a starting role right away. But he's a kid who I would expect to see a share of playing time as a true freshman, and unless he gets hurt. So I'm excited to see him take the field next year. And then another guy, Theo Johnson. I think I harped on him a little bit in the previous video, but he was the last commitment of this class. He just announced last week on a ceremony at his high school up in Canada, in Ontario. And he's continuing that newfound tradition of tight end 6'6", 242 pounds, very athletic, great pass catcher, great blocker. So he's and he's going to have a year to learn under Pat Fryermuth's tutelage. So that'll definitely help ease him into competing for a potential starting role in 2021 and beyond. So that's another thing to be excited about. Also, other name, Keziah Holmes, and the running back room is, they're just getting even more stacked. You got him and Kevon Lee, a pair of 4-star running backs out of Florida, which, thanks to running backs coach Jaywan Sider, is now becoming a state where the Nittany Lions are making their recruiting presence known. Out of those two, I'd say Keziah Holmes is probably the one who's more likely to be an immediate impact guy. He's like about 5'11" and a half, 109 pounds, but just a very quick, got an amazing burst. If you look at his film on YouTube or wherever you look at highlights, he's a kid who I could see utilize him as running back or put him in the slot position and utilize him in the passing game. But yeah, he's a kid that I'm also really excited to see. Kevon Lee, I think I don't know if he'll be an immediate guy, but he's a kid who I think down the road can definitely be an impact on the running back room. And while we're on the subject of skill players, I'm really excited to see Parker Washington, four-star receiver out of Richmond, Texas. He's he many were anointing him as the heir apparent to KJ Hamler. He's similar size, about 5'10", but he's actually a little bigger at this point than KJ was. He's 201 pounds. But if you look at his height, he's just a very, very smooth runner, very shifty. He's a kid who can, like KJ, he's a guy you can either utilize in the passing game or put him at returner, or utilize him on some jet sweeps. So he's, like I said, he's probably the heir apparent to KJ. Keandre Lambert, another kid. If you look at his film, he also shows a lot of promise. He's the other one of the 3 4-star receivers that Penn State got in this class. Jaden Doughton is the third 4-star receiver they picked up, and he's a kid who he's a little bit taller, 6'3", 170 pounds. Probably needs to bulk up a bit, but down the line you could see him as as a solid receiver if he can put it all together. As far as maybe guys a little under the radar to keep an eye on, my top pick would be Tyler Elsdon, inside linebacker. He has shot up in the rankings lately. He's more of a high 3-star as opposed to a lower 3-star when Penn State got his commitments. But you look at his film, he just reminds me so much of guys like Paul Postlesny, Sean Lee, just those old school Penn State linebackers who, would could just man that middle of the field very well. And just he has great. If you look at his, he just does a great job of identifying where the ball carries and then just closing in on him. When it seems like he's far away from him, but he just knows how to close in on a guy real quick and keep a play from becoming anything bigger than a couple yards gain. And Malik Mega, 6'4" receiver also out of Canada from Montreal. He's a 3-star kid, but he is a very speedy guy. He's raw. He's going to need definitely going to need some work in the weight room and strength conditioning program. But another kid who down the line, he could make an impact. Fatorma Malba, 3-star defensive tackle out of Harrisburg. Very interesting story. This kid and his family immigrated to the U.S. from Liberia 5 years ago. And the kid never played football in his life, and he's a big dude. He's a really big dude. Takes up a lot of space. 270 pounds, 6'3", 270 pounds. Takes up a lot of space. He's a kid who, with proper molding from the strength conditioning staff under Dwight Galt, he's a kid who I think perhaps sooner rather than later you might be seeing as a part of Sean Spencer's Wild Dogs rotation on the D line. And I guess I'll also be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to Nick Dawkins, offensive guard. He's the son of Daryl Dawkins, former 76ers legend, who unfortunately passed away several years ago. So he wasn't around to see his son commit today. He signed a letter today, but he's actually a kid who's kind of taken on a leadership role in that class. I've been very vocal, trying to get other kids on board. And when Penn State was going through a rough patch earlier in the year with decommitments and all, he would tweet out how firm he was to Penn State and how he still believed in the program and whatnot. So, if that attitude is any indication, I think I think he's a kid who down the line could see some action. So, like I said, it's not as heavily loaded with blue chippers like the previous couple of classes were, but you can still got some solid blue chip kids, as well as some kids who I think are a little under the radar and could, with proper strength development, they could 2 or 3 years down the line be key contributors to the team.
Shop Amazon. Use the link in the description section below. Help us build the channel. A lot of you are shopping for some reason this time of year. I don't know what the deal is, but I understand it's a big shopping a week or two here. Tim Aiden's on the line from Black Shoe Diaries to break down Penn State football. Of course, it's National Signing Day. James Franklin has had the bulk of this class wrapped up for quite some time. I'm counting 8 players in the top 10 or the top 20 at their position in the country. We've got 11 4-stars out of the 27, and Maryland is the origin of 4 of these players, Pennsylvania 4, Virginia 4, so that's none surprising right there. Of course, the same regions, and then dipping into Florida and New Jersey as well to get most of these players, Tim. So obviously that's Penn State ground. It's a national program, but that's always going to be the kind of fortified as Penn State territory there along the Atlantic coast.
Well, certainly, and as you highlighted, once again they delved heavily into the DMV region. That's DC, Maryland, Virginia, for those who don't know the lingo. So, a lot of kids. They got 4 kids out of Maryland, 4 out of Virginia, and 1 out of DC. So, once again they're dipping around there, and still get a couple kids out of Jersey. That's a place where they're hoping for the 2021 class and beyond. They can rebuild some relationships there that may have gotten a little strained in the past, and hopefully they'll be able to get some, a lot like kids like Fidel Diggs, 4-star defensive end who signed with Texas A&M. There was a bit of drama with him. Supposedly Franklin thought that, I guess the staff thought there was a chance he may flip on signing day to them. And they even had a spot on their big board. So for those not familiar, Penn State does a NFL draft style presentation every year on signing day. And, they FaceTime the recruit who just sent their LOI in, and, they do a presentation in front of them. And, it's a fun little spectacle. But they, as I mentioned before, 27 commits, they put up a 28th spot on the board. And my understanding is from, reading last 24/7, they were thinking that Fidel Diggs might flip to them last minute. He's a kid they had been working on for a while now, but unfortunately it didn't quite happen. So hopefully going forward they'll be able to grab more top Jersey recruits like him. Of course, we'll also see how that dynamic changes with Greg Schiano at Rutgers now. So that's something to look forward to. But as you mentioned, now they're becoming a bit of a more national program as far as recruiting is concerned. As I mentioned, Parker Washington out of Texas, grabbing a pair of the Florida running backs, and Holmes and Lee. And, the year before that, they got John Dunmore, another 4-star receiver out of Florida in the 2019 class. And so you can sense, as I mentioned before, they're building a pipeline down there. So, obviously Pennsylvania, Maryland, Pennsylvania, the DMV area, Jersey, that's going to be their prime recruiting ground. But it's good to see them branching out down to Florida, and as well as places like Michigan, Texas. So, if you're gonna bring in top 10, top 15 classes, you're going to have to also grab some kids from outside your region, because some years your region may not be as strong. Like, I know Pennsylvania had some studs this year. It was better than the last couple of years when I know Pennsylvania was pretty weak. I think 2021, just from what I remember looking at, it looks like a pretty strong year for Pennsylvania recruits. So hopefully they can get back to the dominate the state mantra that Franklin famously used at his introductory press conference 6 years ago.
3 of 4 years getting to New Year's 6 bowl games, Rose, Fiesta, and Cotton, winning 10-plus games, finishing in the top 10, obviously continues to yield big dividends for James Franklin and company with a top 13 class as it stands right now, and that should hold firm through February. Tim Aiden on the line from Black Shoe Diaries. We encourage you to jump on over there to catch Penn State coverage, football, basketball, and the other sports programs there. Tim, we know you got a lot going on with covering National Signing Day, so I appreciate you stopping by.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me.